The wagon never arrived. That's what they told Jonas Mercer when he stood at the depot for the 7th morning in a row, snow piling up past his knees, wind cutting through his coat like a razor. His daughter Ellie clutched his hand, her small fingers trembling, and whispered the question that haunted them both. "Pa, what if she changed her mind about us?" Jonas didn't answer. He couldn't. Because deep down, in a place he wouldn't admit existed, he wondered the same thing. Red Fern, Wyoming, January 1885. The kind of blizzard that swallowed entire families and spat out frozen corpses come spring. The town had sealed itself off from the world, every road buried, every train halted, every soul trapped in their own private winter hell. But Jonas had been waiting for Evelyn Ashford, the woman who'd written him letters that made him believe in second chances, who'd promised to come west and be a mother to his daughter, who'd signed every letter with the same phrase, "I do not fear hardship, Mr. Mercer." Now she was missing, and Jonas was about to learn that sometimes the hardest thing about loving someone is finding them before the world takes them away forever. The livery doors crashed open that evening, interrupting supper. A man stumbled in, half frozen, ice crusted on his beard like he'd been kissed by death itself. Jonas was on his feet before the man finished his first sentence. "Black Creek Crossing," the driver gasped. "Wagon flipped. Ice gave out. We went sideways." Jonas grabbed the man's collar. "Was there a woman? Brown hair, quiet, helped people with their bags?" The driver's eyes went distant. "Yeah, sweet thing. But when we crashed..." He swallowed hard. "Folks scattered. Some died. Some ran. I didn't see her after." The words hit Jonas like a bullet. That night, after Ellie fell asleep clutching her mother's old shawl, Jonas sat alone in the barn, rereading Evelyn's last letter by lantern light. "If your heart is kind, and your daughter in need of warmth, then perhaps that is a life I could call mine." He was going after her, even if it killed him. The sheriff met him at dawn, tried to talk sense into him. "Black Creek will bury you in 10 minutes, Jonas. You've got a little girl who needs her father." Jonas swung into the saddle. "That's exactly why I'm going. Ellie deserves to know that when someone you care about is lost, you don't just wait for spring." Ellie ran to him, tears streaming down her face. "Don't let the snow swallow you, Pa." He hugged her tight, breathing in the smell of her hair, memorizing the feel of her small body against his. "I'll come back, and if Miss Evelyn's out there, I'll bring her home." Then he rode into the white, where no tracks remained, and death waited in every drift. What Jonas didn't know was that Evelyn Ashford wasn't just fighting to survive. She was fighting to prove she was worth finding. The woods swallowed him whole. 2 days of riding through snow that buried Boulder up to his chest, through wind that screamed like a woman dying, through cold that made his bones ache and his thoughts slow. Jonas pushed forward, eyes scanning for any sign, any clue, anything that said she'd pass this way. On the second afternoon, he found the ranger station. Smoke rising from the chimney. Life. Inside, 4 survivors huddled around a weak fire. An older woman with snow-white hair looked up when he entered, and something in her eyes made his stomach drop. "You her intended?" she asked. "Yes." "Then sit down, son. You need to hear this." The woman's name was Martha. She'd been on the wagon when it crashed. And what she told Jonas changed everything. "That girl saved a child's life," Martha said, her voice cracking. The wagon rolled. People were screaming. Wood was splintering, and she stayed calm, pulled a little boy out from under a board before she even checked herself for injuries. Jonas's throat tightened. "Where is she now?" "She went for help, headed north." "But..." Martha's voice dropped to a whisper. "She took the wrong ridgeline. I tried to stop her, but she was determined. That was 2 days ago. North, into the deepest part of the wilderness. Alone. Jonas was back on Boulder within minutes, heart pounding, mind racing. If she'd gone north 2 days ago, if she'd taken the wrong ridge, if she'd been injured in the crash. He found the first sign an hour later. A scrap of blue wool caught on a thorn bush, fluttering in the wind like a flag of surrender. He grabbed it with numb fingers, his breath catching. It was hers, the same blue she described in her letters. Then he saw the footprints. Small, unsteady, heading deeper into the forest. And beside them something that made his blood run cold. A trail of blood. "Evelyn," he whispered into the wind. "What happened to you?" The prince led him down into a ravine, where the snow had collapsed and reformed, hiding God knew what underneath. Jonas moved carefully, Boulder snorting nervously, sensing something wrong. Then Jonas saw it. A leather pouch, half buried. He dropped to his knees and pulled it out, hands shaking as he opened it. Inside was a Bible, frozen stiff, edges damp, and a note. "Jonas Mercer, Red Fern, I hope I will be worthy to be your wife." Her handwriting, her words, her hope. Jonas clutched the note to his chest, snow falling silently around him, and made a promise to the empty air. "I'm coming, Evelyn. Even if it's through snow, or silence, or death itself, I will find you." But what he found next would test that promise in ways he never imagined. The ridge broke open like a wound. Jonas topped the rise and froze, his heart stopping dead in his chest. The wagon wreckage spread before him like a graveyard of broken dreams. Splintered wood, shattered wheels, scattered cargo half buried in snow, and in the middle of it all, a massive boulder that had crushed the carriage's heart. But no bodies, which meant survivors, which meant Evelyn might still be alive. Jonas dismounted, moving through the wreckage like a man walking through a nightmare. Then he saw it, another scrap of blue fabric caught on a bare branch. He grabbed it, his pulse racing, and looked down. Drag marks. Faint impressions in the snow where someone had crawled, using only their hands, too weak to stand, fighting for every inch. God, Jonas breathed. She fought like hell. The trail led down toward a dry creek bed. Jonas followed it, Boulder trailing behind, both of them moving faster now, desperate, terrified of what they'd find. That's when Jonas almost missed her. At first, she looked like just another snowdrift. A small mound at the base of a tree, barely visible against the white. But then Jonas saw the hand, small, pale, fingers curled against the cold, reaching up through the snow like a drowning person grasping for air. His heart stopped. "Evelyn!" He was beside her in seconds, dropping to his knees, pulling snow away from her face with shaking hands. She was so pale, lips tinged purple, eyes closed, frost on her eyelashes. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, fluttering gasps that barely counted as breathing. "No, no, no," Jonas whispered, stripping off his coat and wrapping it around her. "Don't you quit on me now." He cradled her head, brushed snow from her cheeks, leaned close to feel her breath against his skin. "Barely there, but there. I'm here," he whispered. "You made it. Just hold on." Then, a miracle. Her lips moved. "Jonas," she breathed, so faint he almost missed it. "I said I'd come." Her head lulled against his arm, and Jonas didn't wait. He gathered her up, rose to his feet, and started moving. The forest blurred around him, snow, branches, wind, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Not when he'd come this far, not when she was still breathing. Twice the ground gave way beneath him. Once his leg plunged knee-deep into a hidden ravine, and he had to hoist her higher, biting back a shout of pain. Boulder followed, silent and steady, like he understood the gravity of the moment. Evelyn moaned once, then went still. Jonas spotted the trapper's cabin just before dusk. Half buried in snow, roof sagging, but shelter. He kicked the door open and stumbled inside, laying her down on a pile of old pelts near the hearth. "Please," he whispered, pressing his forehead to hers. "Don't leave me." Outside, the wind howled. Inside, the fire hadn't been lit. But Jonas's will to save her had never burned brighter. What he didn't know was that saving her was only the beginning. The real fight was about to start. Jonas tore through the cabin like a man possessed. Flint, tinder, birch bark. Within minutes he had a fire crackling, orange light spreading across the walls. He turned to Evelyn, still unconscious, and made a decision that would change both their lives. He had to get her out of her frozen clothes, had to warm her core before hypothermia took her. But he was a gentleman, damn it, and she was barely conscious, and every instinct screamed that this was wrong, that he should wait, that she coughed. A wet, rattling sound that said she was dying. Jonas didn't think. He turned his back, carefully unlaced her frozen cloak, peeled the soaked fabric away without looking, wrapped his own dry shirt around her, layer by layer, hands shaking the whole time. Then he piled pelts over her and pressed his hand to her forehead. Burning hot. Fever. He searched the cabin frantically, found dried willow bark in a glass jar, boiled snow, steeped the bark into tea. He held the cup to her lips. "Come on, Evelyn," he whispered. "Come back to me." Hours passed. The fire crackled. Snow whispered against the windows. And then, a soft cough. Jonas spun around. Her eyes fluttered open, pale blue and unfocused. "Jonas," she croaked. He dropped to his knees beside her. "You're safe." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean for it to be this hard. Don't ever apologize for surviving." Her lips trembled. "I was trying to come to you. I wanted to be worthy of the letters you wrote." Jonas swallowed hard. "And I wanted to be the man you believed I was." Silence fell between them, not empty, sacred. Then Jonas told her about Ellie, about his daughter who'd been waiting, hoping, praying for a new mother. And Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "I always dreamed of meeting her," she said. "I wondered if she'd know I was scared too." Jonas looked at her. "She hoped you'd smile more than her ma did. I think you do." Evelyn gave a soft, tired laugh. "Only when I can feel my face." That's when they heard the howl. Jonas's head snapped toward the door. Outside, in the darkness, something moved. Yellow eyes gleaming between the trees. The sound came again, low, hungry, getting closer. Wolves. Jonas grabbed his rifle and stood, silhouette stark against the firelight. "Stay here," he said, helping Evelyn into the farthest corner, stacking crates around her. Her hand clutched his sleeve. "You won't leave me?" He knelt beside her, voice steady and fierce. "I'll stand between you and whatever's out there, I promise." The wolves came when the wind dropped. Jonas stood in the doorway, rifle cocked, watching shapes circle in the darkness. He fired into the air. The crack echoed like thunder, but not all of them retreated. One lunged. Jonas swung the rifle, but the wolf was faster. Teeth flashed. They crashed into the snow together, Jonas wrestling the beast, trying to keep those jaws away from his throat. Blood stained the white. His shoulder ripped open. Pain exploded through him. Behind them, in the cabin, Evelyn heard the struggle. She was weak, fevered, could barely stand. But Jonas was out there fighting for his life. For her. She grabbed the iron ladle from the fireplace and stumbled to the corner where an old barrel sat. She lifted the heavy wooden lid and began slamming it down. Bang, bang, bang. The sound was sharp, unnatural, wrong. The wolves froze. Then, slowly, they backed into the trees. The wolf on Jonas snarled once more before bolting after its pack. Jonas rolled over, gasping, blood dripping from his torn sleeve. Evelyn collapsed against the crate, her strength gone. He crawled to her, cradled her shoulders. "Why did you do that? You're burning up and half frozen." "You were out there alone," she said, voice shaking. "I couldn't sit and do nothing." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Don't ever scare me like that again." Later, after he'd bandaged his shoulder and the fire had been stoked again, Jonas sat beside Evelyn on the floor. He pulled out the torn scarf she'd been wearing when he found her. With a small bone needle and thread twisted from fabric strips, he began to stitch it. "This isn't much," he said quietly, "but I figured it'd keep you warmer, and maybe remind you of today." "What day?" "The day I found you, half buried in snow but still breathing." He finished the stitch and handed it to her. She took it slowly, fingers tracing the fresh seam. "Thank you," she whispered. Then, in a voice so quiet he almost missed it, "I'm not what you think I am." Jonas turned to her, listening. "I'm not pretty," she said. "Not like people imagine. I have no dowry, no family name. I wasn't supposed to make it out of St. Louis. I thought when you saw me you'd change your mind." He reached for her hand and placed it over his chest, where his heart pounded. "What I saw," he said gently, "was the woman who walked into a blizzard to keep her word. I fell for the heart behind every letter. That's the part of you I cherish. I wanted so badly to be enough." "You are," he said. "You were, even before I found you." She closed her eyes and leaned against his shoulder. Not from exhaustion this time, from safety. Outside the wind howled. Inside something stronger than fear took root. Something that felt, for the first time, like home. But Jonas didn't know that bringing Evelyn back to Redfern would be harder than finding her. Because the town was about to show them both what real survival looked like. The snow had begun to melt when Jonas rode into Redfern with Evelyn in front of him, wrapped in a heavy blanket. His arms circled her protectively, and people stopped to watch. Old Mr. Thorne leaned on his hammer outside the forge. Miss Clara squinted from the bakery window. Curiosity followed them, not unkind but constant, the way small towns watch everything. Near the mercantile, a small figure burst into view. "Pa!" Ellie called, boots splashing through muddy puddles. She stopped short when she saw Evelyn, eyes wide. "Pa, did you bring back a snow angel?" Evelyn smiled, pale but touched. Jonas dismounted and helped her down. "This is Miss Evelyn," he said. "She'll be staying with Mrs. Hattie for a little while." Ellie studied her, then offered a muddy hand. "Hi, Miss Evelyn. I saved you one of my best cookies." Evelyn crouched carefully and took the child's hand. "That's the kindest welcome I've ever had." For a few days, everything seemed perfect. Evelyn recovered at Mrs. Hattie's boarding house. Ellie visited every morning with cornbread and her beloved rag doll, Beatrice. They braided hair together, sewed doll clothes, shared soft memories. "Sometimes," Ellie whispered one evening, "I think Mama sent you so Pa wouldn't be sad anymore." Evelyn's eyes stung with tears. She kissed Ellie's forehead. "Maybe your Mama and mine are watching us together." Jonas visited each evening. They sat on the porch with tea, talking softly about the ranch, about Ellie, about small things that mattered more than either of them admitted. One afternoon, he took her riding. She clung to the saddle, stiff but determined, and when she nearly slipped, Jonas steadied her. "Don't worry," he said, laughing. "You'll get it. I'm just glad the horse doesn't judge me." They rode to the ridge behind the ranch, where green shoots were breaking through the brown. Evelyn looked out at the landscape and said, "This was never in your letters, but it's the best part." That night, as Evelyn tucked Ellie into bed, the girl looked up at her. "Do you ever want to stay? Like stay forever with us? The question struck harder than Evelyn expected. She smoothed Ellie's hair. I think about it more than I should. Later, standing by her window, watching moonlight settle over Red Fern, Evelyn thought, maybe this is where I was meant to come all along. But the next morning, everything changed. It began with whispers. She must be running from something, murmured Mrs. Crane outside the mercantile. I heard she never even had family in St. Louis, just showed up on a mail wagon and latched onto Jonas Mercer. By the end of the week, the whispers had teeth. Poor Ellie, another woman said. That girl needs a mother, not some stranger with secrets. Evelyn felt every pause in conversation, every sideways glance when she stepped onto the boardwalk. What began as curiosity had curdled into suspicion. The widows watched her most closely, eyes sharp with judgment, seeing scandal in every quiet moment. Then came the blow she couldn't ignore. At the saloon, loud enough for half the town to hear, the wagon driver from Black Creek spat into the snow and said, I remember what she said when the wagon tipped. I can't go back there. Said it like her life depended on it. He slapped cards on the table. Don't sound like no innocent bride to me. By morning, Evelyn was no longer the angel Jonas had carried through a blizzard. She was the question everyone wanted answered. The mystery woman, the stranger with secrets. She stopped going to market. She kept her curtains drawn at Mrs. Hattie's, watching the muddy street without stepping out. When Ellie knocked one afternoon, Evelyn hesitated before letting her in. Is it true people don't like you because you weren't born here? Ellie asked. Evelyn blinked hard. Maybe. Sometimes people are afraid of what they don't understand. Ellie smiled. But I'm not afraid of you. Jonas heard the whispers too. The sheriff pulled him aside. You sure about her? A woman who comes all that way alone. That's a story. Just hope you know how it ends. At the feed store, another man muttered. Mercer's got himself a mystery woman. She'll bring trouble. Jonas didn't answer. His jaw clenched so tight it ached. That evening, he knocked on Evelyn's door. She opened it slowly and he saw the half-packed bag on her bed. You leaving? He asked. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I can't stay. They're talking about you, about Ellie. I won't let that fall on your family. Jonas exhaled slowly. Evelyn, we found each other for a reason. Don't let people who never knew you decide what comes next. I thought I could take it, she whispered. But every day I'm holding my breath, waiting for someone to call me a liar, or worse. Then a soft voice broke the silence. Are you really going? Ellie stood in the corner, clutching her doll, eyes wide and pleading. Evelyn's heart cracked. She dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around the little girl. I don't want you to go, Ellie whispered. I like you. Jonas watched them, something tightening in his chest. He knelt beside them both. If you're leaving because you want something else, I'll let you go. But if you're leaving because of fear, you're letting them take your future. Redfern doesn't get to decide who you are. You do. Evelyn looked up, hand resting on Ellie's hair. I'm just so tired of running. Then stop, Jonas said. Stay with us. Silence filled the room. Evelyn stood slowly, walking to the window. Outside, the sun had dipped below the rooftops. The world held its breath. Jonas stepped closer. Ellie and I, we want you here. The question is, do you? Evelyn didn't answer, not yet. But the next morning, she would make a choice that changed everything. And what she didn't know was that her past was about to catch up with her in the worst possible way. Dawn broke cold and clear. Evelyn stood outside the boarding house, hands trembling, staring down the muddy lane toward Jonas's ranch. She had barely slept. Words unsaid had kept her awake, pressing against her chest like frost on glass. She stepped off the porch and started walking. past the mercantile, past the church bell, down the familiar trail. Then she saw Ellie, already outside, bundled in her shawl. Without hesitation, the girl ran. Evelyn barely had time to kneel before Ellie flew into her arms, hugging with all the strength a 6-year-old could give. "I'm sorry if I made you sad," Ellie whispered, "but I don't want you to go. Not ever." Evelyn clutched her close, heart aching. That one sentence, the purity of it, dissolved so much of her fear. Behind them the porch creaked. Jonas stepped into the sunlight, boots quiet against the boards. "I don't know what you've decided," he said, "but wherever you stand, I'll be on the side that has you in it." Evelyn rose slowly, still holding Ellie's hand. She looked at Jonas, then beyond him, toward the hills and fields, this place that had nearly buried her, and the man who had refused to let her go. "I've run my whole life," she said, "but when I was lying in that snow, broken and afraid, I only thought of you. You and Ellie. I don't want to run anymore. I want a family. I want to stay with you." Ellie laughed and clapped, joy lighting her face. Jonas stepped closer and pulled something from his pocket. A simple silver ring, polished but worn. "It's not to bind you," he said, "just to remind you you're not alone. Evelyn Grace Ashford, will you stay and be my wife?" Tears filled her eyes, but her smile was soft and sure. "Yes, yes, I'll stay." But before they could celebrate, before Jonas could slip that ring onto her finger, a horse came thundering down the road. A stranger dismounted, tall, well-dressed, with cold eyes that swept over Evelyn like she was property. "There you are," the man said. "Been looking for you, Evelyn. Or should I say, Mrs. Thatcher?" Evelyn went pale. Jonas stepped in front of her. "Who the hell are you?" "Name's Thatcher, William Thatcher, and that woman you're about to marry, she's already my wife." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Jonas turned to Evelyn, confusion and hurt warring in his eyes. "Evelyn." She was shaking, tears streaming down her face. "Let me explain, please." Thatcher laughed. "Explain what? How you ran away from our marriage, how you stole from me, how you lied your way onto a mail wagon to escape." "I never stole anything," Evelyn said, her voice stronger now. "You kept me locked in that house for 2 years. You beat me. You told me I was nothing. When you passed out drunk one night, I took what little money I'd hidden and ran." "You were my wife," Thatcher snarled. "You had no right." "I had every right to survive," Evelyn shot back. Jonas's mind was reeling. "You're married." "The marriage was never consummated," Evelyn said quietly. "He married me for my father's land. When my father died and the land went to creditors, he had no more use for me except as a servant. I'm not his wife. I never was. Not in any way that mattered." Thatcher stepped closer. "The law says otherwise, and I'm taking you back." That's when Jonas moved. He stepped between them, hand on his rifle. "You're not taking her anywhere." "She's my legal wife, Mercer. I have papers." "Then show them to the sheriff. Until then, you get off my land." Thatcher's eyes narrowed. "You're making a mistake." "The only mistake," Jonas said, voice deadly calm, "is you thinking I'd let you touch her again." For a moment, it looked like Thatcher would draw, but then he saw Jonas's eyes, cold, unwavering, the eyes of a man who'd ridden through a blizzard to save the woman he loved, and something in Thatcher broke. "This isn't over," he spat, mounting his horse. "I'll be back with the law." He rode off, leaving dust and dread in his wake. Jonas turned to Evelyn. She was crying, shoulders shaking. "I should have told you. I wanted to. I thought if I came far enough west, if I changed my name, if I became someone new." "You are someone new," Jonas said gently. But we need to face this together. What happened in St. Louis? Evelyn told him everything. The marriage her dying father had arranged to a man she'd never met. The wedding night when Thatcher had shown his true nature. The years of isolation, of being told she was worthless, of being locked away. The night she finally escaped. "I'm not really Evelyn Ashford," she whispered. "My real name is Evelyn Carter. Ashford was my mother's maiden name. I used it to hide." Jonas was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I don't care what name you used. I care about who you are. And the woman I found in that snow, the woman who saved a child during a wagon crash, the woman who fought off wolves to protect me, that's who you are, not what some bastard in St. Louis tried to make you." "But he has legal papers. What if—" "Then we'll fight," Jonas said. "Together." Ellie, who'd been watching silently, squeezed Evelyn's hand. "You're not going back to him, are you?" Evelyn knelt down. "No, sweetheart, never." But she didn't sound certain. And as the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across Red Fern, everyone knew the real battle was just beginning. Because 3 days later, Thatcher returned. And this time, he brought the law with him. The marshal arrived on a gray morning, flanked by 2 deputies. William Thatcher rode beside them, a smug smile on his face. They stopped in front of Jonas's ranch, and the marshal dismounted, papers in hand. "Jonas Mercer?" the marshal asked. "That's right. I'm Marshal Hewitt. I have a writ here for the return of one Evelyn Carter, legally married to William Thatcher of St. Louis, Missouri. Is she on your property?" Jonas's jaw clenched. "She is. Then I'll need to see her." Evelyn stepped out onto the porch, pale but composed. Ellie clung to her skirt. Marshal Hewitt looked at her, then at the papers. "Mrs. Thatcher, I'm afraid you'll need to come with us." "No," Evelyn said simply. Thatcher's smile widened. "See, Marshal? Told you she'd resist." "Ma'am," Hewitt said, voice gentler. "I understand this is difficult, but the law is clear. You're a married woman. Your place is with your husband." "My place," Evelyn said, voice shaking but firm, "is where I choose it to be. And I choose here." "That's not how marriage works." "He beat me," Evelyn said loudly, so the whole town could hear. People had gathered now, watching from windows and doorways. "He locked me in a room for days. He told me I was his property. That's not a marriage, that's a prison." Thatcher's face darkened. "She's lying. She's hysterical, Marshal. Women always are." "I have scars," Evelyn said, rolling up her sleeve to show faded marks on her wrist. "From the rope he used to tie me to the bed when I tried to leave the first time." A murmur went through the crowd. Even the marshal looked uncomfortable. "Listen," Hewitt said quietly. "I don't like this any more than you do. But the law says—" "The law is wrong," Jonas interrupted. "And I won't let you take her." One of the deputies moved his hand to his gun. The tension ratcheted up immediately. "Jonas," Evelyn whispered. "Don't. I won't let you die for me. And I won't let you go back to him." Thatcher laughed. "Touching. But she's coming with me whether you like it or not." That's when a new voice cut through the tension. "Actually, she's not." Everyone turned. An older woman stepped forward from the crowd, Martha from the ranger station. The survivor who'd been on the wagon with Evelyn. "I'm Martha Hollis," she said, "and I have something to say." Marshal Hewitt frowned. "Ma'am, this is a legal matter." "I know what I saw on that wagon," Martha said loudly. "This girl saved a child's life during the crash, risked herself to pull a boy from under debris while the rest of us panicked. Then she walked into a blizzard to find help, even though she was injured and terrified." She turned to Thatcher. "You say she's your property? Well, I say a woman like that belongs to no one but herself." Applause broke out from the crowd, quiet at first, then louder. Other women stepped forward. Women Evelyn had helped at the mercantile, women she'd shared tea with, women who'd watched her with Ellie and seen something real. "She's one of us now," said Miss Clara from the bakery. "And we don't let our own get dragged back to men who hurt them." The marshal looked around, clearly uncertain. This wasn't a situation he'd anticipated. Thatcher's face went red. "This is absurd. She's my wife. The law—" "The law says a lot of things," said a new voice. The sheriff stepped forward, the same man who'd tried to stop Jonas from riding into the blizzard. "Marshal Hewitt," the sheriff said, "I've been doing some digging. Sent a telegram to St. Louis. Talked to some folks who knew Mr. Thatcher here." Thatcher went pale. "Turns out," the sheriff continued, "you're wanted for questioning in connection with the death of your first wife. Woman named Elizabeth Thatcher. Died under mysterious circumstances 2 years before you married Miss Carter here." The crowd gasped. Even the marshal looked shocked. "That's a lie," Thatcher shouted. "Is it?" The sheriff pulled out a telegram. "Because according to this, Elizabeth Thatcher died from injuries sustained in a fall down the stairs. But 3 neighbors reported hearing arguments and screams that night. The case was never closed." Thatcher's hand went to his gun. "I wouldn't," Jonas said quietly, his own rifle already aimed. For a moment, everything hung in balance. Then Thatcher's shoulders sagged. He knew he was beaten. "You haven't heard the last of this," he spat. But even as he said it, the deputies were moving toward him, not Evelyn. "William Thatcher," Marshal Hewitt said heavily, "I'm taking you back to St. Louis to answer questions about your first wife's death." As they led Thatcher away, he turned back to Evelyn one last time. "You'll regret this." "No," Evelyn said, voice steady. "The only thing I regret is not leaving sooner." As the marshal and his prisoners rode away, the crowd erupted in cheers. Women rushed forward to embrace Evelyn, men clapped Jonas on the back. Ellie jumped up and down, laughing. But Evelyn just stood there, shaking, tears streaming down her face, finally free. Jonas pulled her into his arms. "It's over." "Is it?" she whispered. "What if he comes back? What if—" "Then we'll face it," Jonas said. "Together. Always together." That night the whole town gathered at the church, not for a funeral, but for a wedding. Evelyn wore a simple dress, borrowed from Martha. Ellie scattered wildflowers down the aisle, and Jonas, standing at the altar, watched the woman he'd found in the snow walk toward him, no longer running, no longer afraid. "Evelyn Grace Carter," the preacher said, "do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" She looked at Jonas, at Ellie, at the town that had chosen to protect her, and she smiled. "I do." "And Jonas Mercer, do you take this woman?" "I do," Jonas interrupted, making everyone laugh. The preacher smiled. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Jonas kissed her, soft and sweet, and the church erupted in applause. Ellie rushed forward, wrapping her arms around both of them, and for the first time in her life, Evelyn felt like she belonged. But the story wasn't over, not quite yet. Because that night, as they walked home under the stars, Ellie between them holding both their hands, Jonas said, "There's something I need to tell you." Evelyn's heart sank. "What?" "Remember when I said I was writing to a mail-order bride service? I lied." She stopped walking. "What?" Jonas looked embarrassed. "I mean, I did write to a service, but I also wrote to 6 other women. You were the only one who responded." Evelyn stared at him. Then slowly she started to laugh. "You wrote to 6 women." "I was desperate," Jonas said defensively. "Ellie needed a mother, and I was lonely, and I was the only one foolish enough to say yes to a cowboy in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming. Well, when you put it like that, Evelyn kissed him hard. I'm glad I was foolish. Me too. Ellie tugged on their hands. Can we go home now? I'm hungry. They walked back to the ranch, the three of them, and as they reached the porch, Jonas turned back to look at the town. Redfern had changed, or maybe they had changed it. Either way, it felt like home. Inside, Evelyn lit the lamps while Jonas stoked the fire. Ellie climbed into Evelyn's lap with a book, and together they read until the little girl's eyes grew heavy. "Mama," Ellie whispered, half asleep. Evelyn's breath caught. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm glad Pa found you in the snow." "Me too, Ellie. Me too." Later, after Ellie was tucked into bed, Jonas and Evelyn sat on the porch, wrapped in quilts, watching the stars. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't gone looking for you?" Jonas asked. "Every day," Evelyn said. "But then I remember. You did. You rode into a blizzard, risked your life, fought off wolves. You found me when I'd given up hope." "I couldn't not find you," Jonas said. "From the first letter you sent, I knew. You were worth finding. Even with all my secrets, all my baggage." "Especially with them," Jonas said. "Because they made you who you are, and who you are is extraordinary." They sat in comfortable silence, hands entwined, watching the night settle over Redfern. Green shoots were pushing through the earth now, spring coming despite the harshness of winter. Life continuing, growing, thriving. "Jonas," Evelyn said softly. "Yeah? Thank you for finding me twice, once in the snow and once in my fear." He pulled her closer. "I'll keep finding you, every day, for the rest of our lives." And in that quiet moment, under stars that had witnessed so much hardship and hope, they both knew it was true. The mail-order bride had never arrived that day in January. But in her place came something better. A woman who'd fought through hell and snow and her own past to find a family worth staying for. A man who'd ridden into death itself to keep a promise. And a little girl who'd hoped so hard for a mother that she'd made one real. Together, they built a life. Not perfect, but theirs. Not easy, but worth every struggle. And when people asked Evelyn years later what made her stay, when so many had told her to run, she always gave the same answer. "Because Jonas Mercer taught me that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who'll ride through a blizzard to find you when you're lost. And I was lost for so long, until the day he found me in the snow and showed me what home really means." Redfern changed after that winter. The town learned that sometimes the strangers who arrive with secrets are the ones who need shelter most. That judgment is easy, but compassion takes courage. That a woman's worth isn't measured by her past, but by how she faces her future. And every spring, when the snow melted and green shoots pushed through the brown earth, Evelyn would walk to the ridge where Jonas had taken her that first time. She'd stand there, hand shading her eyes, looking out at the land that had nearly killed her, and instead given her life. "Thank you," she'd whisper to the wind, to the mountains, to whatever force had brought her here. "Thank you for the blizzard. Thank you for the crash. Thank you for bringing me home. Because sometimes the worst storms bring the greatest gifts. Sometimes you have to be buried in snow to learn how to rise. And sometimes the person you were always meant to be is waiting on the other side of fear, in the arms of a cowboy who refused to let you die." If this story stirred something in your heart, if you believe love can bloom even in the harshest winters, then don't let this be the last time we meet. Hit that subscribe button and join us for more tales of resilience, hope, and the kind of romance that stands tall against storms and silence. Every story is a reminder that even in a world of dust and distance, love finds a way. So go ahead, subscribe. Let the prairie winds carry you to the next unforgettable chapter. Because stories like Evelyn's, Jonas's, and little Ellies deserve to be told, shared, and remembered. And who knows, maybe your story is next.